Hello again and welcome to the Patrick Chapman Show. I'm Patrick Chapman and here we go. So yesterday was a wonderful Saturday and my football team, the Jaguars of Konti Wrocławskie, and I traveled up to Poznan for a game there against Armia Poznan. The experts, mind you, had ranked us as the underdogs. It was a low-scoring defensive battle in which we started out with and maintained the advantage in field position, eventually drew first blood, and led 6-0 at halftime. Armia later tied the score on a pretty pass to the end zone, and we ultimately went into overtime, tied 6-6. After a couple exchanges of possession in overtime, we were able to run the ball into the end zone for a 12-6 victory in which we never trailed. I didn't get any playing time myself, but a win makes for a much more enjoyable bus ride home. I got home at almost 9 o'clock in the evening, and my daughter and I watched Grease. Grease has the double nostalgia factor of having been made all the way back in the late 70s and being set all the way back in the 50s. That the car could fly in the end is hardly less believable than that it could cause chicks to cream. Chicks don't cream. But I love the flick, and it's in a genre of fun films in which older actors play teenagers in high school. Some others are Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Romy and Michelle's High School Reunion, and Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Anyhow, today I'm talking a little bit about food. My mama used to cook what she called grumpkies, a recipe she'd learned from her mother-in-law, my paternal grandmother, a born-in-Chicago Polka. When I came to Poland, I learned the real term for them was gołąbki, as in 1 gołąbek, 2 gołąbki, 5 gołąbków, I guess. They're still one of my favorite dishes, and what a gołąbek, or a grumpki, as I still call one in English, is a leaf of cabbage wrapped around rice and meat stuffing and covered with a sauce, usually a tomato sauce. I've had some very good ones, and I've made them myself a couple times, but nothing compares to Mom's. On my first day in Poland, the very first dish I ate, very first meal, was a soup. And soups are always the first. You always have soup first for your what we call obiad, which translates roughly into something like either lunch or dinner. Nobody's ever quite sure. Is this lunch or is this dinner? Because some things don't quite translate perfectly, and I'll explain more about that in a minute. So it was at the school cafeteria where we were going to have our meetings every day during training, and we just landed, got on a bus, and came to Płock, and so we're in this cafeteria, school cafeteria, with a kitchen in Płock, and they served us this soup, and it was pickle soup, and if you could just imagine opening a jar of pickles and taking the pickles out, chopping them up, and making soup out of them. You know, in America, we don't have anything like that. And when I took my first spoonful, it was a shock. And I'm like, this is weird. And it was weird. But, you know, there are very few things I don't like, especially as I get older. I just eat everything. And so I took the second spoonful, and I'm like, all right, the shock is wearing off, and I'm starting to like it. And by the time I finished the bowl, it was just delicious. You know, I loved it. Totally different from anything in America. And that was cool, because it's like real culture then. It's not like, it's not like kebab or a KFC or McDonald's or something. It's like real something different and very Polish. So that was delicious, and now I love ogórkowa, as it's called, or pickle soup. And on the whole, the best part of Polish cuisine is the soups. The soups are wonderful, and they could compete with the French or the Chinese because those are probably the two best soup making cultures out there. I mean, I'm sure a lot of places make good soup, but you know what? You're going to compete against the French? Are you kidding me? Yes, if you're the Chinese, you can. Good for you. And then people on that go, well, what about Thailand? Well, okay, also. Um, we don't have to have a soup fight about soup, but but the Polish soups could compete with all of them, and I mean it. They're wonderful, and I've had a lot of soup in my time. Um, it just reminds me of a little story that I hadn't thought about when I was preparing this. But there's a great restaurant near here. It's just outside of Hoynhoeve, I think, or maybe in Hoynhoeve, and it's in an old windmill, and it's called the Windmill, or in Polish Wiatrak. And they make this wonderful garlic soup. It's like creamy garlic soup. It's delicious. Okay, but that's just a little aside. Let me go back to soups. So later that same summer, I think on a weekend, probably a Saturday, we with some friend of a friend, we got into a car. We drove outside to the outskirts of Płotsk to a farm. And we're at this farm, and the farm had cows, a few cows. I don't remember how many. Maybe, let's say 6 cows. So it was like a small dairy farm. But they also had cherry trees. And so there were cherry trees all around the farm. And so everything we ate there was made of cherries. And we had this hot cherry soup with noodles in it. And it was, can you imagine cherry soup? That's not something you would eat or make or think of or invent. But it tasted like cherries. It was good. And with cherry compote, which is a kind of a drink. It's like stewed fruit that you drink. And it's also good. It's a very Polish thing. We don't have that in America. So a lot of good stuff here. Cherry soup was very unique. I remember on that day too because we were learning Polish, let's say, and I'm not a good student. I never was. I had never learned a language. I took Spanish in high school because it was supposed to be the easy one, and then I still could have, I didn't learn anything. So here on this day, this man of the farm is trying to teach me the word for cow, and I could not remember it. I mean, he told me, okay, I repeated, and then, 15 minutes go by, and I couldn't remember when he asked me, and then he would remind me, and then, okay, got it now, got it. And then another, an hour later, he would ask me again. I don't remember. I can't remember this one stupid word. How am I going to learn this language? Anyway, now I know it. It's krova. So the word for cow is krova. Now I've beaten it into my head. Okay, let's go. So then, okay, we had our training. So those are 2 cool soups that I learned about in Płotsk. And then driving from Płotsk to my site in Dobiegnia. It was a long drive. I got picked up by my counterpart, Teresa, and her husband, Andrzej. And Andrzej drove a nice big Mercedes-Benz with a trailer, So, and I didn't have that much stuff. We probably didn't need the trailer, but he didn't know that. So plenty of space to fit everything. And we made the long drive, and on the way we stopped at a restaurant, a little roadside restaurant, and had lunch. And so we got the flaki, and flaki is like gut soup. I suppose it's like pig guts because they got more pigs here, but it might have been cow guts. I don't know, but it's like the intestines. And it's the only dish in Poland that is spicy, and it has to be spicy. If it's not spicy, you don't want it. Because Polish food is not at all spicy. It's good, but it's not spicy. So, but the flaki is spicy, and it was very good, and I like it. So it's some people would find it a little disgusting. I found it delicious. So I like flaki. And we don't have that in America, or at least I've never seen it. Maybe somebody's going to say, oh, but yeah, I've had it. Good, but it's not common, and I've never seen it in America. Hang on, there's something on my computer popping up. Okay. so flocky. And then there's this kind of soup I've only heard about. I've read. I think I first read about it in in a book, and then and I've heard about it and I've asked about it, but I've never seen it at anybody's house. I've been in a lot of houses where they cook, and I've been in restaurants. I've never seen it at a restaurant. But when I ask people, they're like, "Oh yeah, yeah." And most people have never had it, but they all know what it is, and it's called chernina. And chernina is, or some people call it charnina, and charni means black, so it's like black soup. But I think the real word for the soup could be charnina or chernina, and it's blood soup. And I've never had the opportunity to try it. I would try it. Most people are kind of disgusted by it, and it's one of those old dishes from the old days when they didn't have anything and they had to eat what they had. And some of those things survive and some of them just don't, and it would be hard to find it, but I've heard that you can find it, but I've never. And now I'm getting something else on here. Just a second. Okay. But I remember my dad telling me, I keep hitting this thing, uruchom ponownie, aby zainstalować coś tam, najnowszą aktualizację funkcji systemu Windows. You know what? I don't want this now, and I keep clicking przypomnij mi później. That's what I want, but not right away później. I mean like tomorrow or next month. Sorry about that interruption. It's going to come up again in about a minute, I bet. I hope it doesn't. Okay. Chernina. So, I remember my papa telling us, or me, that he remembered his, I think, grandfather, but it might have been an uncle, because it's blurry, but it was clear in his memory. It's blurry in my memory. Anyway, they would go down to the basement, or the cellar, in whatever building they were in, and his, let's say, grandfather would kill a goose and drain the blood into a bucket. He would like stab the goose in the neck, I think, and drain the blood into a bucket to make this, what I guess was blood soup. So maybe that was chernina. I don't know if it was goose blood that they use traditionally or some other kind, but blood soup, and they used to make that in Chicago, and my dad ate it. And I didn't even think to ask him if he liked it or not. I don't think there was any choice about liking or not liking. They were so happy to eat. But he had a pretty poor childhood, and I wanted to say something. Oh, yeah, this is the other thing I've heard about this chernina, is that, and I don't know if this is true, but I've heard they would like cut the goose to get the blood sometimes, and then keep the goose alive, for the next Sunday meal or whatever, to get some more blood. I don't know if that's true. Okay, let's talk a little bit about chłodnik. Chłodnik comes from the word chłodny, which means cool, and it's a cold soup that they eat in the summertime. The typical chłodnik is made with beets. Made with beets, and so it's red, very red. And I didn't like it at first. The first time I had cold soup was at a restaurant in America, or it might have been at a friend's house when I was in high school. I think one time, one of my friend's moms served cold soup, but it wasn't too impressive. Then I got it at a restaurant one time by accident. They recommended it, the waiter recommended it or something, or it was on special. And I'm like, sure, and it was supposed to be soup. And then I get it, and it's cold soup, which I didn't know until my first spoonful, and it's very disappointing. Because I wasn't expecting it. It was a hot summer day, but I didn't want cold soup. And I felt pretty much the same about chłodnik the first time I had it, but now I like it. I've come to like it. And there are different kinds of chłodnik. And so it's good. It's good. I like chłodnik. Żurek is made with fermented rye. It's some kind of rye soup. And these are all, I'm trying to get a cover of the things that we don't have in America. Um, so Jurek is good, and then there was a time in Bielsko-Biała. I went to a restaurant with a friend, and we got soup, and it turned out you could order the soup just in a regular bowl if you wanted, or you could pay a little more, and they give you this. It's like a bread. It's a loaf of bread that's been hollowed out, and now that crust of bread is the bowl. And this thing's popping up again on me, and I'm clicking it off. Okay, so the bowl is bread, and the soup, hot soup, is inside. Might have been a żurek, or might be a mushroom soup, which is a grzybówka. Anyway, and you eat the soup from the bread, and then that the inside of that bowl of bread bowl, has sucked up, absorbed the soup, so that bread is just delicious, and you scrape it out to the inside of the crust, and then you can just eat the crust, eat the whole bowl. It's a wonderful invention, and I had never seen that in America, and that was a nice surprise, and delicious and filling and great. So good idea, and stick with that one. Krupnik is, I think, barley groats kind of soup, and then there's kapushniak. Kapushniak is cabbage soup, and it just reminds me of bigos, which is a dish of like cabbage dish, which is good. There's bigos and there's bigos, there's really good bigos, and then there's like so-so bigos. So there's a wide variety of qualities when it comes to bigos. It's not my favorite dish, but it's good. And kapushniak is like liquid bigos or something. It's like bigos soup. Pretty good stuff. But like I said, all the soups are great. There's not a bad one. And they really can compete with the rest of the world. And that's not true of all of the other dishes. The main dishes are pretty good, pretty solid, pretty tasty and filling and good, but not comparable to some of the other cultures or countries. And the desserts are horrible. We'll get to that in a minute too. So let me talk about the meals a little bit here. They got śniadanie, which is breakfast. Okay, fair enough. Everybody has that, right? Not going to argue. What's funny though is when they say, I ask my kids, my students, what they had for breakfast, just to make conversation or ask a silly question to get some English being spoken, and they'll say cereal with milk. And it's just funny to me when they always add that, with milk. Like, is there another way to eat cereal? Just say cereal. I had cereal for breakfast, not cereal with milk. Although, when they eat cornflakes here, which is the most common kind of cereal, they'll eat it hot, like hot milk on cornflakes. And that was weird. I can't say that I like it because I'm not used to it. I just like the cold milk. But that cereal with milk reminds me of the black guys in New Orleans when I was growing up, and they would talk about an ink pen. Like, let me get this. Like, this is an ink pen. Why not just a pen? I mean, I guess it could be like a pig pen or a bull pen. But, so to distinguish from those, they call it an ink pen. That was always funny. Say, bro, you got ink pen? All right, so you got śniadanie, but then they got what's called drugi śniadanie, and that's like second breakfast. So now we get confused, because is that like kind of lunch? Because they eat it like later in the morning. And so, or just second breakfast, I don't know what you want to call it, because then we come to obiad, which is the big meal. And so that gets translated in sometimes to lunch and sometimes to dinner. And the fact is, you can't quite translate it. And that's why when I'm speaking English with my students, I just say obiad. I don't even try to say dinner or lunch, because it's just too confusing. It's something completely different, and it's nothing like our lunch nor our dinner. For one thing, if it's not a work day, if their natural time to eat it is at 2 o'clock. And we don't really eat anything at 2 o'clock. We eat at 12 o'clock. We have lunch, maybe 11:30, maybe 1 o'clock. There's a range, but lunch is lunchtime. And 2 o'clock is not lunchtime, and it's not dinner time. So, but they, plus minus an hour, but it's about 2 o'clock. They eat obiad. And then it's a specific thing. It's not just eat whatever you want, like, like in America, we might have many different things, but in Poland it starts with soup. You always have soup as the first dish. If it's a real obiad, you're not just like trying to get somewhere fast. So you got your soup dish, which I said are all great, and there's always different kinds. Um, and then you got your main dish, which always has potatoes. Sometimes they'll have rice instead of potatoes, but mostly it's potatoes. It's a potato country, and they eat potatoes. And so some kind of meat and potatoes, maybe a pork cutlet or or maybe gołąbki, maybe something like that. So very good. And then to drink, they got compote, which I said was like this kind of stewed fruit, which we don't have in America. Delicious, good drink, probably pretty healthy. Not too sweet, a little sweet, not too sweet. Um, or tea. They drink tea here, and they even for the children, I think they call it tea or herbata in Polish, but I don't think it's really tea. I think it's like fruity flavored something or other, kind of like tea. So, but they drink a lot of tea here, which I don't drink much of, but sometimes I do. But they don't drink tea with milk. Almost never. If they do, they call it Bavarka, but nobody drinks it. They say, oh, that's Bavarka. They always remind me. And when I say, do you drink tea with milk? Oh, you mean Bavarka. And nobody drinks it. So why do they even have the word? I don't know, like it came from Bavaria or something. Um, they drink tea with lemon often, and then with sugar too, some of them. So, right. Mm-hmm. Okay, so then so we got obiad, which is kind of between lunch and dinner, and then in the evening they have kolacja, which I guess is more like supper or something. And even in America now, you don't know the difference between supper and dinner. I think in the old days there was a distinction, but now we just kind of call them both the same. And more often we probably use the word dinner, but you could just as well call it supper. Um, Right. And talking about these words that don't translate well, another good example, because there are some of them. There's just there's not quite an equivalent for that word. And one of them is nastolatek. Nastolatek gets translated as teenager, but the problem is it includes 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, and 12-year-olds. So it's anybody from 10 up, I think, through 19. I don't think it includes the 20-year-olds, but I think it's 10 to 19, whereas a teenager is 13 to 19. So there's a little tiny difference, and who cares, right? But I mean, if you're 10, you're not a teenager, and if you're 11, you're not a teenager, etc. Um, and then a food word like that is naleśniki, which gets translated into pancakes all the time, but it's not at all pancakes. What it really is crepes. So imagine if you went into a restaurant in America and you ordered a plate of pancakes and they gave you crepes. You'd be like, wait, I didn't order these, I ordered pancakes. And vice versa, if you ordered crepes and they brought you up pancakes, you'd be like, I ordered crepes. So for my Polish friends who are listening out there, naleśniki is not pancakes, it's crepes. And yeah. Okay, and then let's talk about Polish sausage, because this is something we know in America, right? Wrong. When I came to, when you're in Chicago growing up and you hear about Polish sausage, you're like, well, should we get the Polish sausage or should we get this, I don't know what other kinds of sausages there are, but whatever. And the great sausage countries, when you think about it from an American point of view, are like English breakfast sausage, maybe, like England, Germany might make good sausage, Italy, Italian sausage. Chinese make great sausage. If you're ever in Chinatown, anywhere, get the sausage. It's awesome. Probably, maybe the best in the world. And Polish sausage is famous. It's one of the things that Poland's famous for. And, so then I had this French friend and went back to France to go home for a stay, for a holiday, came back with sausage. So this French sausage, and it was the best ever. It's like the French can do no wrong when it comes to cooking. Their food is wonderful, and I'm like, here I am in sausage land, and you bring better sausage from France. Because you don't hear much about French sausage when you're in America. It's like all, German, Italian, Polish, English, maybe. All right. So here I am in Dobiegniew, right? And I'm thinking, I'm gonna go to a meat shop, and there are like, this is a small town. They had like, I don't know if it was, I don't know how many people lived there. A very small town, and there's like at least five meat shops, just meat, like not like food store, and they have meat. They had those too. They had food stores, and the food stores all had meat, and there were a few of those. But there were also just meat shops where you walk in and there's nothing but meat. It's about the size of this room, like just not huge, not like a shopping center or a, what do you call it, a supermarket, but just a shop. And you got to talk to the lady at the counter. You look through the glass case and you say, "Oh, I'll have a kilo of that and a kilo of this or whatever." And hanging behind her on the wall would be all these sausages. And I walk into one of these shops, and I'm thinking, okay, which one is the Polish sausage? like it's like an eye-opening thing. Like, oh yeah, they wouldn't just have one kind of sausage, and like that's Polish sausage. It's just like, and there's like, I don't know, 20 different kinds of sausage hanging behind the lady. So one time I went into one of these shops because I was going to go to an ognisko, which is we talked about parties one time, and it's like this is the fun kind of bonfire party, this ognisko, and I hadn't been here long, and I was like, I don't know what kind of sausage do you bring to that, because I thought I would get a couple of links, maybe three of some kinds, but I remember asking the lady, or trying to ask her, like, which one of these would be good for an ognisko, and she helped me out with that, so that was good. And then also, speaking of sausages, there was one time, maybe I've told this story before too, I don't remember, but I went out to go shopping. I was in Dobiegniew in my little apartment, and I was probably out of food, which happened every now and then, every second day or third. So it's time to go shopping because I don't have anything to eat. And I kind of forgot that it's Saturday morning. I just wasn't thinking that. I'm like, it is Saturday morning. It's not like I didn't know that. It's just that I forgot that this is shopping day for everybody. And you have to remember too that when you're in your apartment or your bedroom or wherever you are alone, and you're kind of trying to learn the language and you're planning a dialogue in your head, you're imagining having this conversation with the shop assistant, and saying what you want, a nice smile, she's smiling and she's saying, correcting your Polish, and then she's saying, she gets you the wrong thing. You said, no, that's not what I meant. And then she says, oh, well, the word for that is this. And then, you have a kind of a fun exchange, and you learn a little bit, and you pay, and then you count your change, and you go home, right? And you have a nice little friendly learning experience, right? The problem with that imagination is that, and it is how you always imagine it. You imagine like this kind of one-on-one situation, and what you forget is there are other people in the shop, and they're not in your imagination when you're in your kitchen trying to pretend to have this dialogue or whatever. So I go out on a Saturday morning, I go to one of these shops just to buy food, and there's a line of people, and I'm like, oh crap. So, but I start sweating, and I'm just standing there quietly, and of course when I walk in, everybody knows I'm the American. And so, and these are the days before supermarkets. There were no supermarkets, not in any place, like not even in, I mean, maybe I'm wrong and there were some in Warsaw, but that's it, and I don't even think there were any then there. So you go into these little shops and you talk to the lady over the counter, and then she goes and gets what you want. Like, oh, I would like a jar of mustard. Okay, she goes and gets the jar of mustard. I need 2 onions. She goes get the 2 onions. I want a loaf of bread. She gets a loaf of bread. So then this is the whole exchange. So you wait your turn in line, and on a Saturday morning, there'll be 2 girls working behind the counter, just going fast, filling up the thing. And every time they bring something, they put a mark on the piece of paper to remember, what the order is and how much it's going to cost. So they're busy on a Saturday morning. All these people are in line. I walk in, and that's the American. So finally, it comes my turn to order, and it goes silent. I mean, just, you could have heard a pin drop, and I'm sweating. I'm so nervous. And I try to, as quietly as I can, ask the lady for whatever else I wanted. I don't remember, maybe a loaf of bread or something. But I wanted 2 links of sausage. I try to say it quietly, but I don't know if I knew the word for link. I don't think I did. I don't know. I don't even know it now. I don't know. I guess I could have said 2 sausages. And maybe that's what I tried to say. I don't know even now the word for link. And so the lady looks at me and she says, 2 kilos? And I didn't know how much a kilo was. But I'm thinking that sounds like too much. And I said, no. And maybe I tried to repeat it, but she said, 1 kilo? And I said, you know what? I want to get out of here. Yes. And that's when I learned how much a kilo was. And I had so much sausage, I think, yeah, it was enough for the whole week plus, I think. Anyway, lots of sausage in a kilo. Okay. So also when it comes to cooking, I always just assume that you get these assumptions in life, and they turned out to be false, a lot of them. And one was that Polish girls learn how to cook while they're growing up, helping mama in the kitchen. And it's not true at all. Mama is busy. She's got other kids to worry about. She's probably working a job. She's living in a tiny block apartment, especially in those days. And with a tiny kitchen, and she doesn't want to be bothered. She doesn't have time for kids in the kitchen. So she's trying to cook fast, and she doesn't teach her daughter to cook. So the daughter grows up and gets married, and that's when she starts learning how to cook. And she's on the phone to mama. Mama, how do you cook gołąbki, So that's when they start learning. And that was a surprise to me, but it kind of makes sense once you look at the details. Some of these things that don't initially make sense end up making sense. Which reminds me of a saying that we had during Peace Corps training, was that we had the saying, we said, everything you know is wrong. And that's kind of how the Polish reality was. Like, soon as you know something, like you learn something, now you know it, it's wrong. It's like the more you learn, the less you know, or something. Or you think you got something down, nope, that's wrong. Anyway, funny saying. Here we go. Homemade noodles. And this is, I gotta backtrack a little bit on what I just said about girls not learning how to cook when they're young. Because I do remember seeing one friend of mine making noodles, and what surprised me was, first of all, it wasn't like she had the flour, the flour, white powder flour, on the counter or on the table in the kitchen, a little table with a pile of flour, and then she's cracking eggs into the pile of flour without a bowl. I would assume you would do that in a bowl, but she didn't have it in a bowl. She just had it on the table, or maybe on one of those big cutting boards. And then she started like mixing it up into dough and then rolling it out and making noodles. And I'm like, wow. So a lot of people just make their own noodles, which is probably not difficult. I just never would have thought about it. And then, I know I've heard people in America say, oh yeah, I do that sometimes, or yeah, I've done that, or I know somebody who does it. So I hear about it sometimes. I'm like, but I've never seen it done. And my mama even didn't ever make her own noodles that I remember. And she did a lot of wizardry in the kitchen. I mean, she was great as a cook, and she loved cooking. But I don't remember her ever making noodles. So I've never actually seen it in America. I've heard of it, but I've never even been served homemade noodles. But it's quite common here in Poland. Okay, the desserts in Poland are nothing great. There's nothing really to be too proud about, although they are kind of proud of their cheesecake especially, which to me is so-so and could not compare to the rest of the world. They don't do desserts very well, I gotta say. It's just that the soup's wonderful, desserts not so good. And then when they want to add raisins to the cheesecake, like, what are you thinking? Like, why would you add raisins to anything? And I'm a guy who likes raisins. I like raisins. I remember the little Sun-Maid boxes when we were kids as a snack, or put in your lunchbox, and you could eat the raisins right out of the box. Great. I love raisins, but not in stuff. It never makes anything better. Don't put raisins in anything. Not cookies, like you got your chocolate chip cookies with raisins. No raisins, Carrot salad, add raisins. No, don't do that. Don't even put raisins with peanuts. You know, good old raisins and peanuts. Just don't do it. Don't add raisins to your cheesecake or anything else. They got the charlotka, which is, you know, they always kind of want to lean towards like kind of apple pie. It's not apple pie. It's made with apples and it's good, but it's not apple pie. Apple pie is wonderful. Charlotka is good. Um, so, you know, so the desserts, you can eat the desserts. I'm not saying they're horrible, but they can't compete with other countries. You know, some people make wonderful desserts, and the Polish are kind of, honestly, they're so-so. The soup's wonderful. Um, there are some things that I didn't used to like when I was a kid, my mama would serve beets sometimes, and they were from a can, and I don't think it's because they were from a can that they were so bad. I think it was just I was repulsed by the taste. Maybe they were too strong a flavor or something. Just it would make me like almost gag the taste of the beets, and I just couldn't eat them. And I came to Poland, and they serve beets all the time. And you very often get beets. Like borscht is another great kind of soup made with beets. So is that chłodnik, the beet soup, the cold beet soup. So borscht is wonderful. And I like borscht, even though I didn't like beets. But the beet soup, okay, I can handle that. It's pretty good. And then, but I didn't like beets, and I just wouldn't eat them. And so one day I'm in Dobiegniew, and I used to eat at this it was like a nursery school. They had a kitchen, so I was a teacher, and I would walk down there, and I got nice obiats with for a very low price. I think it was a good price, and I would just sign up, and I would go there every day and eat my obiat. And so I'm in there one day, and I didn't eat my beets. I had the soup first. You always get soup, and then I had the meat and the potatoes, but I left the beets. And the lady comes in, and she starts yelling at me. She's like, so, and then, and because of her, what I did was I think I mixed them. I learned how to mix them in with the potatoes, and then I got used to them, and now I like beets. So I like everything. Okay, I'm gonna be done here then. I'm sure I got more to say about Polish food, but it'll come to me in bits and pieces later maybe. I'm gonna cut this now. So until next time, goodbye.